Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me for a look at another of Jesus' miracles. Today, we're looking at the miracle of feeding the 4,000. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, wasn't it 5,000? And later on, you might wonder if I got the number of loaves and fish and baskets left over mixed up as well. But this is actually a different miracle than the more famous feeding of the 5,000. It seems that Jesus did a similar miracle on two different occasions. In fact, Matthew and Mark tell both stories, while Luke and John only record the bigger feeding. Well, let's take a look at the miracle, and then we'll take a look at what it might mean to us. And Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I feel compassion for the people, because they've remained with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And I do not want to send them away hungry, for they might faint on the way. The disciples said to him, where would we get so many loaves in this desolate place to satisfy such a large crowd? And Jesus said to them, how many loaves do you have? And they said, 7, and a few small fish. And he directed the people to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and giving thanks, he broke them and started giving them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the people. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up what was left over of the broken pieces, 7 large baskets full. And those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And sending away the crowds, Jesus got into the boat and came to the region of Magadan. So why does Jesus do the same miracle twice? I mean, it seems like this one is less impressive than the other. He feeds less people here. He starts with more bread and more fish, and less baskets of leftovers are collected. So why even bring it up? Am I right? What do you think? Well, I think that there are at least 2 reasons why Jesus does this second feeding miracle. First, he repeats it because this is a different group of people. And the 2 miracles together show us something that either one on its own doesn't have. And second, I think he repeats it because his disciples hadn't gotten the message yet. So to my first point, these are 2 different groups of people. The first is likely mainly, if not completely, made up of Jewish people. And this one, with the 4,000, is likely to have included, if not primarily consisted of, Gentiles, non-Jewish people. And we see this because of the particular locations of the 2 miracles. The feeding of the 5,000 occurs near Bethsaida, which is primarily a Jewish area. This miracle with the 4,000 occurs in a region known as the Decapolis, the 10 cities. And this was primarily a non-Jewish area. So when we see both miracles together, what we see is that God provides for Jews and Gentiles alike. That Jesus, his miracles, and his salvation are for everyone, not just the Jewish people, but the entire world. To the second point, we actually see in the next chapter that when Jesus is talking to his disciples, he chides them for not getting the point of these 2 miracles. Let's take a look at that. In chapter 16, we see this. And the disciples came to the other side of the sea, but they had forgotten to bring any bread. And Jesus said to them, watch out and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. They began to discuss this among themselves, saying, he said that because we didn't bring any bread. But Jesus, aware of this, said, you men of little faith, why do you discuss among yourselves that you have no bread? Do you not yet understand or remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets full you picked up? Or the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many large baskets you picked up? How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread? But beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Then they understood that he did not say to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So they got that point. They understood now, with Jesus explaining it, that it was the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees that he was talking about, not actual yeast or leaven. But it took them, well, they now also understood not only that point, but I think they understood the point that God is providing for them, that God isn't going to let them starve, that Jesus isn't worried about whether they brought bread or not because he doesn't need their bread, right? But it took them two amazing miracles of feeding thousands of people, and at least two times where Jesus told them that God would provide for their physical needs for the disciples to get that point. What about you? Are there any things in your life where God's asking you, don't you get it yet? How many times do I have to tell you this? But we're all human. And just like the disciples, it sometimes takes us several times of repeating the same lesson over and over and over and maybe over again for us to finally get it. So don't beat yourself up over something that it takes you a long time to learn. But take a good look at it and see if you can't learn the lesson for the last time this time. Thanks for joining me.